Cincinnati's season was on life support, and the Pittsburgh Steelers just came in and yanked that cord right out of the wall. We are going to talk about that. Oh my gosh, I know that you guys are probably fuming as I am. You might be fuming because you love this team. I am fuming because I am tired of watching the crap product every single Sunday, week in and week out. Oh my gosh, it's like Groundhog's Day. Oh my gosh, I'm over it. All right, we're gonna get into that. You are watching Deep in the Stripes. You know me. I'm trying to keep it positive, but what could we take that was positive from yesterday's game? I don't even know. Just comment right now. Let me know if you saw anything of positivity that we can talk about, even next week or even a Wednesday when we highlight their game going into Dallas. All right, this is the Sick Podcast, the sickest Bengals podcast around. I am your host, Elise Jesse. Thank you for being here.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Where do we even start? Do we start with the defense? What defense, right? Or do we start with the offense? I mean, we can start with Joe Burrow because he is the face of the franchise. I noticed when players were walking off the field after yesterday's game, their heads were down, looking at the ground as they were walking in. There were a lot of guys who were at a loss for words, shell-shocked in a way, as we were interviewing them post-game after they let the Steelers come into their house and drop 44 points on them, dropping the team to 1-5 at home. You can't protect your own house. That's baffling to me. The 11 years that I have covered this team, there has always been a sentiment or a sense from the team. Each team, it's different every single year. They have always been the same in the fact that they would take pride in protecting their home turf. What are we watching? We didn't see that yesterday. We haven't seen that in 4 of the 5 home games so far this season. Joe Burrow was asked about, being perfect and very honest. He said he knows he's got to be, and is that sustainable? Of course it's not, but he thinks that he can do anything. So I'm there. I'm here for the confidence that he has, but let's be honest. We all know that a player being perfect at the end, first of all, every single player is human. So every human makes mistakes day in and day out. You're going to have errors. You're going to have mental lapses. Errors and mistakes will happen. So you cannot expect to be perfect every single game, every single play. Joe Burrow was 28 of 38 yesterday, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and 2 fumbles lost. TJ Watt, man. He is such a game wrecker. He is such a problem. But it was weird because I was looking at his November stats, and I think I referenced this last episode. He is a player who only had 1 sack throughout the entire month of November. And then yesterday, he just wrecks the game. I mean, slapping the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands as he's about to throw it. Ends up being a fumble. Bengals lose it. Joe Burrow was sacked 4 times. He was hit 11 times. Cody Ford was told on the Monday before the game. It was actually funny. I was talking to Cody Ford yesterday, and I asked him when he found out that he would get the start at left guard. And he was kind of hesitant to tell me because he didn't want to say the wrong thing, which I understand. It's fine. But he said that he got a text from Frank Pollock on Monday morning that said, "Hey, I need you to come up to my office." And Ford was nervous. He was like, "Oh, I brought my iPad with me." He thought he was getting cut in a meeting where he was being promoted to the starting left guard position. They pulled Volson for that game. Cody Ford played 100% of the snaps at that position. And to me, it's like, the offensive line, yes, they added Trent Brown, but Trent Brown down for the year. They've tried to make changes to protect Joe Burrow, but obviously injuries play a big part in that. But what I do respect is that even though pulling your starter that you've had in that position, like Cordell Volson, for a number of years, and then putting in a backup at that position. Yes, that will ruffle some feathers. Yes, that will hurt some feelings. But I do like the fact that he was at least trying to make a change and see if something would stick. Obviously, it didn't work, but I like that there was at least a change there. And they weren't consistently going out and doing the exact same thing with the exact same personnel and trying to see if there would be something different to come of it. That I am good with. I don't know how long Joe Burrow can sustain getting hit as much as he does. He's been hit and sacked like crazy his entire career here in Cincinnati. And, you see him kind of like, especially at this point in the season, like everybody has their aches and pains, and he just kind of like slowly, gingerly walking after games sometimes. And he was bleeding at one point. Like, it's just, he's getting his butt, he's running for his life. He's getting his butt kicked. Like, yeah, what else can he do? He is literally like putting his body on the line. What else can this man do? This is fun. First team in the NFL's history to score 33 or more points and have 4 losses in those situations. So that tells me that this defense is so bad that Cincinnati's offense has to go out and score 40. They got to throw up 40 points just to have a prayer at a win. That's ridiculous. How many times have you seen a quarterback consistently go into a game and score 40 or more points? It's not something that can happen week in and week out. It's a lot to ask from one position. The Bengals 0-7 against teams who would be in the playoff picture if the postseason started right now. Tells you exactly what we've all been saying all year, is that this Bengals football team is not very good. They have a handful of really, really talented generational talents. Outside of that, not only is there a discrepancy in talent, there's also lack of effort. And there is confusion on defense. They look lost. They look confused. They don't look like they are ready or anticipating plays that they should be. The tackling is nauseating. Everything that the Steelers did on offense looked easy. It was just a day of eye rolls, really. Like, it was I can't imagine being a player on defense and going into the building. I couldn't imagine what those vibes are, because already if you're losing, the vibes are bad. But when you can specifically point to a group of guys who is not doing their jobs well, that cannot be a fun position to be in. But they did put themselves there. We will not gloss over that. We can talk about Lou Anarumo for a second, because he has been taking a lot of heat. In full disclosure, I don't mess with Lou Anarumo. It's like, you know how you just don't like vibe with people? We just don't vibe. And that's fine. I think he's a good coach. And I know that a lot of people lately have been throwing around like names of coaches or other guys that they think would work well in that position. I'm not going to do that, simply because Lou Anarumo is the current defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. So I feel like throwing out names and talking about, potential coaches in that situation in those roles is just playing like a dreaming, wishful game. And this is not a little kid's fairy tale podcast. So I'm not going to do that. I think that is a waste of my time, my breath, and I think it's a waste of your time as well. Because at the end of the day, until that coaching position is vacant, that conversation is worthless, in my opinion. Now, other people might feel differently. That's fine. That's just how I look at it, to be honest with you. What else do I got? I've got like a pile of papers of just like my notes, my rants, like just stats everywhere. Like we're on a roll over here. I will say that. I do remember back in 2020 when It was Zach Taylor's, second year. Well, he was hired in February of 2019. And players were just coming to me, talking to me, complaining really about they felt like there was favoritism among a couple of the coaches, and Lou Anarumo being one of them, and just not like coaching guys the exact same way. And I'm, for whatever reason, that's kind of ringing a bell. I haven't really asked about that because I don't want to stir the pot with the team and make things worse. But I am wondering if those questions should be asked, if favoritism is creeping into this current dynamic between Lou Anarumo and his defensive players. Players just, I don't know. People have talked about his message not getting across. I just don't. Why wouldn't it be getting across? If he's such a good coach, why isn't his message hitting the same way as it was just a few short years ago? A couple short years ago, they were competing for a Super Bowl in 2021. They went to the AFC Championship in 2022. That was not far off. It's not. So what has changed? And I can tell you, I do have that answer. Shockingly, I know this has been a season of like searching for answers and having more questions than answers. No, yesterday did not give us any answers outside of knowing that they are not a very good football team. Here's my take on it. His scheme is complicated, and that has been talked about a lot. Players have consistently spoken about the difficulty level of Lou Anarumo's defense and being able to feel comfortable playing in it and understanding it. It's taken multiple years for a lot of guys to feel comfortable enough to like definitely hone in and know exactly what's being asked of them. And for whatever reason, I think back to the 2015 season. And if you've been a lifelong fan, you probably remember this season. The Bengals they started 8-0 that year. Their defense was firing on all cylinders. They finished the year ranked second in total defense. I think they only gave up like 17 points per game. And I remember players constantly talking that year about Paul Guenther was the defensive coordinator at that time. But they always referenced him as a player's coach. And they would laugh about it because I think it was Thursdays. I don't know. I think it was Thursdays where he would have different guys on defense come up in front of the entire room of their peers. And he would tell them, he would give them a Sharpie and put them at the whiteboard. And it would be like a safety, for example. And they would say, okay, here's the play. What does the defensive end do in this position? What does the defensive end do on this call? What does the cornerback do on this call? What does an interior lineman do on this call? Like he would make everyone study, and the players never knew if they were going to be the one that was called up to the board in front of everyone and made to explain another guy's position. But the reason why Paul Guenther, as I understand, did that is because he wanted every single player under him to feel comfortable enough to know not only what their job was, but also what the other guys' jobs were. Because the whole premise of that was to make sure that the players felt comfortable enough to fly around and just play as they naturally would and play with confidence, knowing everybody's job, knowing that the other guy next to them would do their job accurately, because if they didn't do it, everybody else knew that they didn't do their job correctly. That just created natural accountability on the defensive side of the ball. So I almost wonder if, yes, I know the defense has been talking about how they have team meetings and all this stuff, but I thought it was really interesting yesterday talking to Akeem Davis-Gaither. Logan Wilson was out. He was inactive with an knee injury. And Akeem Davis-Gaither had to play middle linebacker, and he hasn't played much middle linebacker, but he tied Jermaine Pratt with 13 tackles. And I was just asking him, what is going wrong with this defense? And I really was hoping not to hear another answer of, we just got to make plays. I'm tired of hearing that. I'm sure they're tired of saying that, but they're also tired of hearing the same question, so I get it. But he was very refreshing. You're just kind of like, we're not playing together. He's like, I watch other teams. And their defensive units look like they play together. They're not worried about themselves. They're playing with cohesion. And so then I asked, well, you've played football all your life. So you've played on winning football teams. So how does a defensive unit get to a place where they are playing with cohesion? And he looked at me dead in the face and said, we have to have tough conversations. That's what has to happen. Guys have to have thick skin. Guys have to be okay with hearing things that they don't want to hear from their peers. And him saying that in week 13, and this is, I'm searching for the word that I want to use that's correct. I'm speculating, I guess, a little bit, but it's sounding to me like maybe there's not as much accountability as there should be. And it sounds, yes, Mike Hilton is a leader on the defense. He is a vocal leader on the defense, but there's not enough guys like Mike Hilton in this defense. And the Cincinnati Bengals did get rid of two of the key guys who were like Mike Hilton, who were respected like Mike Hilton. I'll name one of them. Alan George is a guy that no one talks about. A cornerback who had only been in the league for 2 years. And I don't know. They cut him because of waiver issues and personnel issues, whatever. He's only making like $200K. Which in football money, that's not a lot, as you know. One thing about Alan George was that he had this ability, this knack to connect with different teammates all around the locker room. And I watched it for multiple years where he would connect guys that would normally not speak. And he would always talk positively about his teammates. And he would always I always saw him sitting in a group of men around him, safeties, cornerbacks, talking like life into them and encouraging them and reminding them what they were great at. Like, it's almost like he would pay attention to what they were good at, and then he would speak that into them. I remember there was one year, it was actually last year. I forget at what point of the season it was in, but they were losing, and they were the locker room vibes were not great. And people, the players were doing their own thing. They're in their own locker room. They're messing with their own stuff, worried about themselves. And all of a sudden you see Alan George walk over. It's kind of like by the entrance. It's the control panel for the music. And he starts blasting gospel music. 2-3 minutes later, instead of guys with their heads buried into their lockers, they are all looking at each other in a circle, singing the same ballad, the same gospel song. They are all connected. The vibes instantly changed in that locker room. These are guys, I'll tell you about another guy in a second, but this is a guy who corporately would be known as a personality hire. They keep the vibes high. They might not get a lot of playing time, but dang, they do know how to encourage their teammates, and they do know how to bring their teammates together, and they know how to lift up those vibes when those vibes are really falling at a rapid rate. Mike Thomas, another guy, a veteran of 12 or 13 years. He didn't get a lot of playing time, but you might remember sometimes there was one specific time where I was interviewing him after Tyson Anderson came back from injury, and he had, I think it was a couple of picks in maybe a preseason game, something like that. And Mike Thomas was talking to me and tearing up, talking about his teammate. He wasn't getting playing time, but he was reminding guys what they were good at. He was speaking life into them, and then also saying, listen, I've been here before. I've had to come back from injuries. I know how hard it is. You can do better than this. You can accomplish this. Those two guys believed so much in their teammates around them. And I think truly that is one of the missing links. I really do. Because you see how talented some of the guys on this roster are, how productive they have been in years past. The coaching has not changed. The coaching has shown their elite coaching ability in years past. You got rid of your personality hires? I don't think that was a good move. Those two guys in particular. And then now you're looking at, well, who could be an emerging vocal leader. You need more than one. You need more than Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton can't be the only guy to tell guys when they're effing up. I think down the line, and this is just my opinion from covering the league for so many years and listening to how guys are and looking at their body language and just paying attention to the way they speak, their tone, things like that. This is one of the reasons why I really like Muma Jungmeta, is because he puts his body on the line. He is willing to sacrifice. He is willing to do anything, but he also definitely speaks with a different kind of vibe than a lot of guys. Like, he just brings that positivity, the encouragement. And I think that once he is in a position where he is actually maybe sees more playing time on defense, maybe he's making the big plays, and that will allow him to have more of a voice. I can see Eric All Jr. being one of those guys down the road. He's only a rookie this year as well. But the way he plays, he puts his body on the line. He puts his team first. He cares a lot about his teammates above himself. And I think down the line, he could end up being one of those guys. So unfortunately, not only we've talked a lot about, losing DJ Reader. DJ Reader was a guy who not only made plays and was a run stuffer. He was a guy who at the time when the Bengals signed him in 2020 for $53 million, he broke right. He was the highest paid nose tackle in the NFL at the time. He was also a guy who I called him the philosopher, because when he was quiet, but when he would speak, you cared about what he was saying. At least his teammates certainly seemed to. Jesse Bates was one of the guys who not only made plays, but he would look at his teammates and he would have fun with them. He'd be like, hey, I'm about to go make this play. And then he would go do it. People enjoyed being around him and Reader. They enjoyed being around Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon constantly celebrating his teammates on the sidelines or letting them know when they were messing up. That's what the point of all of that is, to tell you that, yes, there are a few guys who are vocal leaders, but there are not enough. And we are seeing that. We are seeing consistency in one area with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They missed 14 tackles in week 1 against the New England Patriots. And I don't even know how many they missed yesterday, but it was a ton. They just continue to miss tackles. They continue to take poor angles. They continue to show lack of effort. And it's annoying to talk about this for me. I'm not a person who thinks it's fun to criticize a grown man. I think that's lame. I think that it is annoying. I don't think that's a fun activity to do. But a lot of us, podcasters, reporters, what have you, are in a position where you kind of have to criticize them because they're not doing their jobs correctly. I think everybody surrounded with Paycor Stadium is annoyed with this season so far, I think. One thing that stood out to me yesterday that annoyed me so bad, the officiating was brutal. The officiating sucked. Players and coaches can't say that, so I will say it. The officiating was trash yesterday. The Bengals coming away from a game with the Steelers, committing 11 penalties for 101 yards is unacceptable. Shooting yourselves in the foot. You're making it worse. Not only can you not tackle, not only are you whiffing on making big plays, you're also committing penalties left and right. It's a joke. I'm wondering, at what time will we start to see the ankle injuries come up? You couldn't stop an offense, a Russell Wilson-led offense who couldn't even score a touchdown against the Ravens. They were having trouble in the red zone. They were having trouble in short yardage situations, and you made them look like superstars yesterday. What gives? Tickets to Cancun. Yeah, they're going to start flying. The higher paid players will probably, book a private jet. But man, those trips to Cancun, they're what? I think a direct flight from Cincinnati is like $1,000 right now if you fly coach. Go to an all-inclusive resort, watch the playoffs from an infinity pool with a margarita. That is where you are headed. You still got 5 games left to play. You might as well do that Cyber Monday deal and book the flight at this point. Your season's like the season is over with 5 games left of the regular season. 4-8. And Joe Burrow is putting up the best numbers of his career, along with Jamar Chase. I thought something that Joseph Asai said yesterday was really interesting. He when I asked him about the defensive issues, he's directly across from Joe Burrow's locker, and he just kind of glanced that way. And he looked back at me and he said, this offense is scoring way too many points for us to be giving up as many points as we are. And I appreciated that honest answer coming from him. It's not a conversation that anybody wants to have. It's not a question that I even want to ask, but you have to, because it looks so bad. It's so brutal. I'm interested to see what changes are made in the offseason. I don't think that there will be any changes made mid-season, because I don't think that this front office would pay a guy's salary and not have them coach. They've got to have somebody be the defensive coordinator. You know what I mean? So I don't think any changes would be made until after the season. What I would like to see in these next few weeks, knowing that the playoffs are, that's a very far off concept. Like, we're not talking playoffs anymore. I would like to see more of an evaluation of the current roster. I would like to see guys who maybe don't play a lot on offense go, like Jermaine Burton. I want to see Muma Jongmeta. I want to see Akeem Davis-Gaither more. I just want to see guys. So we know that this coaching staff is able to look at and evaluate guys, not just in practice, not just in training camp, but in live game action, and see how they handle certain situations and see how they play. That way, they know exactly what they have moving forward into 2025. And then they can hopefully draft accordingly to their current roster and maybe not build upon what they have on defense, because I don't see anything that they could build upon on defense, to be honest with you. But build around Joe Burrow, build around Jamar Chase, hopefully focus on getting a deal done with him, and then see what you got. They've done it before. You remember, they benched Andy Dalton, and then they put in, I forget who they put in. His name starts with an F. I can't remember who it was. But they put the backup quarterback in, and they saw what they had with him, so that they knew exactly what they had in that position before they drafted Joe Burrow. So we shall see. I'm hoping to see newer names, guys we never see play, maybe practice squad guys. I don't know. Find a diamond in the rough. I think there could be a few guys who emerge as players that you would like to keep around for a few years. That's just my take. We will break down the Bengals' upcoming matchup, Monday Night Football. They cannot move it. The Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys facing off Monday Night Football, and we're going to talk about that on Wednesday afternoon. I will see you then. And as always, thank you for being here, spending your time with me today. And let me know what you think the problems are on defense. Maybe you think the same thing, or maybe you noticed something that I overlooked. I don't know. But let me know. I'll see you Wednesday.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.